Привет, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Late Nights with Lenin. I'm your host, and today we have Joe Sims from the CPUSA as a guest. But before we get started, I guess we have to do our monologue, my rant. The number one thing, there's this horse here, and it just has been driving me nuts. And I was like, it's a really big frame, and I was trying to figure out maybe if I could measure it, if I could get a stall in, or is that weird too? Because I already have a stall in here, see? Yeah, I have good friends. Yeah. So, I don't know. Anyways, let's see. Dobre utro, my Croatian friend, and thank you so much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum, Shayar, I think. I forgot. So let's see. I feel like this week there hasn't been that many current events or any things I don't know. It just that I haven't paid attention to. I don't know. Yeah. So let's just get to the point. So there's a country that's blocked me on Twitter for some odd reason, and they tweeted out some crap. I don't know what to say. Janet, do you want to just show us this country's tweet? And I'm not the only one who's been blocked by this country. Other people have been blocked by this country too. On Twitter. Which is weird. Why would a country block you on Twitter?
Okay, just give me 1 second. I didn't have it pulled up.
What's about Solomon Islands that was in the news this week? Vijay Prashad was talking about it. Well, I'll Google it. There's a lot of things. Let's see. News. Okay, I know. I mean, this is why I will always Google things for you. There is some kind of unrest. I don't know what that means. Protesters decided to... This flag here makes me super... there's some Israeli flag. This is really... I don't... It looks like some sort of unrest. I don't know if it's a color revolution or a coup or whatnot, but I can figure it out for the next week. Yeah, somebody's protesting... Okay. Invented by Lenin, perfected by Stalin, man-made famines. Oh my God. No, they were not. They were invented by the British because in Bengal in 1770 there was a man-made famine that the British did on purpose, and again in 1790 in Bengal, and then there was the Madras famine in 1854 that the British did on purpose. So no. Okay, hold on. Let's go back up. Okay. Can you make it bigger? Janet, okay. Ugliest Soviet what the hell is a dehumanization? Light a candle and give a thought to the innocent victims of whole. Okay, I will refer to it by its proper name: Smrti or Myortvi at Galadia, death by hunger, against the Ukrainians and a crime against humanity. Okay, let's just talk about something. Okay, so in 1931, you guys know how basically, you guys understand that if you do not have enough labor-saving tractors, cows, whatever, you're not going to grow food. In Odessa, almost, there were 7 tractors, all 7 of them had been sabotaged, and then all the cows and oxes and like all the draft animals had been killed. So yes, it is. So it was a natural. Okay, there was a drought, which means a shortage of rain. But often, even when there's a shortage of rain, you through the use of not artificial irrigation and through irrigation and other like fertilizers and crap, you can actually get still enough food. But because the kulaks had killed all the draft animals and also the irrigate bomb and done all that, there was no way they could get the extra. They could have grown the food. So the drought was natural. But then there was an extra oomph, and that we blame 100% the Ukrainian fascists, who were already colluding, even in 1929, who were already colluding with Germany. And I am working on a really detailed piece about one. His name is Roman Shushyanovich. He was one of the worst of the worst. And he's honored in Canada and probably in the US. But yes, this country blocks a lot of people who tell the truth. Like, hey, what the hell are you doing? Why is there a bandera flag everywhere in your bloody country? Like, why are you having monuments to these genocidal maniacs? And why is at least 50% of the people food insecure when wheat is your main export? Like right now, they have a huge food insecurity problem because they're exporting it because that's more profitable for all the Monsanto-like corporations that they've let privatize in Ukraine. That's a W, and next, a Poland block. How do you wait, does Poland even have a Twitter account? Okay. How do you get a Poland block? I don't know. How does Poland have a Twitter account? Let's see. Oh, by the way, I have a question. Somebody should put up a poll, but Janet wants me to read Workers of the World Undermined, which is talks about how the AFL-CIO collaborated with the CIA. But I'm also reading Nadezhda Remembers. So we can have one of 3 options. Option number 1. No, Zelensky has not blocked me. The country of Ukraine has a Twitter account. I don't understand how, but it does. Okay, Poland also seems to have a Twitter account. Okay. Anyways, the first option is that I read half a chapter of Nadezhda Remembers and read half a chapter of this on Late Nights with Lenin. Option 2 is I read this after I finish Nadezhda Remembers on Late Nights with Lenin. Option 3 is we schedule another broadcast at another day and time to read this, and not read this on Late Nights with Lenin. So I'll somebody, if there's a mod around, can you figure out how to make a poll? If not, I guess we'll have Joe Sims, and we will be back for me to read Nadezhda Remembers. We finished until the end of chapter 2. So let's just kind of there are two questions that have been plaguing me for a while that I want to get out of the way. And then I have a question from my Russian teacher too before we start. Okay. So the very first question is that in 1940, how on, was this like 2 years after all that, capitalism, fascism is capitalism, they had the trials. How on earth did they get the unions to agree to purge the communists? That never made sense. What was different? How? It always, in 1948.
Well, I think, let's see, Mr. Churchill gave that speech in Fulton, Missouri. Mm-hmm. I don't remember the year. Cold War speech, and that was the beginning. And I think that the Smith Act trial started 1 or 2 years later, which led to the deportation of those who were not citizens, who were leaders of the party, like Claudia Jones, for example, and it led to the jail sentences of several others, Gus and Winston.
Yeah, Jarvis spoke about it. And to me, that's one of my favorite quotes when he said, God took away my sight, but gave me my vision.
Right. And that was Winston, Yeah. I haven't lost my vision. And I think that one of the big things that impacted the trade union movement was the idea that the Soviet Union, which had been an ally, all of a sudden became an enemy, and that the people and that the Communist Party of this country, our party, was acting as an agent of a foreign principal. That was the language that they used, that they were following the directives of Moscow. And part of the rationale that they gave for that was the activities of the Third International, the Comintern, that there was one world party.
Yeah.
And that it was all directed from Moscow. But behind all of that,
Labor Party, Green Party, Congress Party, all of them are international, the African National Congress.
Of course.
Okay.
But only one of these many were not only calling for, but had expropriated capital without compensation, Mm-hmm. And that scared the hell out of, Wall Street and its equivalent in London and Paris and the other foreign capitals of the planet. But behind all of that, I think Aisha was the atomic weapons race, you know, and the idea that another power that was diametrically opposed to your economic and political interests had the capacity or was developing the capacity to equal you in military strength and might and that could potentially have first strike capability. And that just drove them nuts, you know, it seems to me. And then there was one more thing, I think, that affected the labor movement, which was a section of it got bought off.
Yeah.
You know? A section of it got bought off.
I have
and decided to accept a deal.
So this book talks about it. Workers of the World Undermined, how the AFL-CIO played a pivotal role in U.S. foreign policy. But yeah, a lot of the unions did see that.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a second question. What made, this actually comes straight from my Russian teacher because he's just curious. What made you join the Communist Party?
Made me join? My mother made me do it.
Seriously?
My mother, I come from 3 generations of communists and socialists and working class on both sides of my family. My mother was a member of the party. And her mother was a member of the party, the Communist and the Labor Party here in New York back in the day. That's on my mother's side. And then on my father's side, my grandmother, my father was not in the party, nor was my grandmother, but they were both very strong trade unionists and civil rights activists. In fact, my father's mother and my mom were brought before the UAC committee in the 1950s. Because grandma was so militant. In fact, she ran for governor of the state of Ohio in 1948, along with Henry Wallace on the Progressive Party line. My grandma did. Now, her dad was a coal miner in Alabama and was very pro-union. And so she developed that pro-union consciousness. And so it's kind of in my blood. It's kind of, you know.
Okay. So the second question he asked he was really curious. He's, I guess, from Belarus, and he's like completely doesn't understand a lot of this. And I couldn't answer. It was right after I visited you, and I couldn't answer these questions. So I was like, oh, these are good questions I should ask Joe. So what So we're talking a little bit about racial discrimination, and for him, it was a little hard to understand until I showed him this picture from the 1930s. And then I told him, okay, here's a picture. This is my picture. I'll put it up. There's a picture I put where I blur the thing so you can't really see the ethnicities. They're both from 1941. One is from the US and one is from one of the camps in Europe. And I asked people to spot the difference. And one primarily imprisoned Black men for their labor. And he was shocked by that. So then he wondered, like, what percentage of the Communist Party in the US has people of color, like Black people, Latinos, et cetera? Do you have stats on that?
Well, not enough, I would say. The party has always been multiracial in this country. In fact, in the 30s and 40s, we were known as the party of the Black people, they said.
Yeah,
that was
I've seen all the scare posters from the KKK.
Yeah, I mean, because of the role that we played in the defense of the Scottsboro case. Angelo Herndon.
Oh yeah, Angelo Herndon. For people who don't know, I think he was Black, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, it's hard with black and white photos. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and he was accused of reckless eyeballing.
No, all he
like
did was feed. He gave bread to children, and he was arrested under the Slave Act, Slave Insurrection Act.
Insurrection, you're right.
And and then you guys like raised a lot of money for his defense, and finally the Supreme Court let him go on a technicality, but it was essentially for like giving poor kids some bread or something like that, buying.
Right. And Ben Davis was his lawyer.
Oh.
Benjamin Davis was his lawyer, and he recruited Ben to the party back in Georgia, and Ben then moved to New York and became a party leader. So, so we've always had African Americans, Latino, Native Americans in the party. To this day, it's kind of ebbed and flowed in terms of the percentage, but we've always maintained that multiracial character. So I don't know the answer as to the exact percentage. We don't keep those kinds of figures. We had a school recently for the YCL in New York, and it was about 50% Black and Latino and Asian. Our Asian numbers now are much better than they've been. In fact, the number of South Asians and people from Southeast Asia and China, much larger than it's ever been, which is a wonderful thing.
Well, there's two aspects for that. I can speak for it personally, is that if your parents are immigrants or don't have citizenship, you're a little scared. That's the first one. And then the second one is it has to do with the Cold War and the kind of immigrants like that. I mean, for the most part, if you weren't wealthy, you couldn't really immigrate from Southeast Asia for the longest time. And that kind of also affects their outlook. So, yeah.
I can imagine.
Okay, so I guess the third question he asked, and I know there's no way you can actually completely answer it, but it's like he has the conception of he has a conception of oppression, as in like what the world did to Russia during World War II or and ever since, but he kind of doesn't understand. I guess he wants to understand what is life. This is really hard. Like, okay, so how does where to begin? I guess when we're talking about the racism in America, where do we begin? Like, just say whatever you want him or people like him to understand, because actually we do have a large European contingency, and I bless their heart, but they're so confused and they just don't understand. They're like, why don't you guys workers just unite and do this and that? And they have good intentions, but they just don't understand the special problem of super racism in the US. And I know this because I have a friend named Natalie, and she's from South Africa. And she seriously said, well, I actually felt less racist in apartheid South Africa. So can you talk a little bit about what is some of the manifestations?
Well, being Black and living in America.
Wait, do you consider yourself to be Black? Just curious.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I usually ask because it's some people are like, no, I'm Latino. So you just kind of want to not make assumptions.
Sure, of course.
Okay.
Well, first, there's always a degree of not feeling safe in your own skin and in your own body, and not being able to go into a store and be treated like other customers, you get followed.
Mm-hmm.
There is not being able to drive back home to see your parents without feeling like you might get pulled over by the state police because of the way you look, you know. And of course, the darker you are, the more unsafe you feel, you know. I've been pulled over and accosted by the police on a number of occasions, and then you always you fear in danger of your life, you know. So that's one aspect of it. And then there's another dimension of, you know, always this enormous feeling of frustration of no matter what you do, that you can't get ahead, you know. There's a scene from a novel. I forget who it's by. Maybe it was by Toni Morrison.
I think it's from Ralph Ellison.
No. It was a woman. It was either Toni Morrison or Alice Walker. And she's describing the frustration of a black man, and he's standing in his driveway, and he just throws up his hands in despair because everything he's tried to do just hasn't, you know, worked. And that, I think, is something that is very pervasive in you know, that you know, there's a common expression that we have that when we were in school, in order to get the same grade as a white counterpart, you had to do twice as better, you know. In order to get the same job and maintain your job security, you had to work twice as hard, you know. And no matter how hard you studied or how hard you worked, you know, you're the last hired and first fired, you know. So that, you know, and then there's this notion of not feeling like an essential part of the country. You know, Dr. Du Bois talked about it in terms of this like double consciousness of being in the country but not of it, you know. I remember back in the 70s, I was campaigning for Gus Hall and Angela Davis to get on the ballot. They were running for president, and you had to get this enormous number of signatures. Anyway, we were standing outside of an unemployment office, and I would approach these young brothers who were coming to file for
by brothers, you mean, sorry, just for the international audience, by brothers, you mean other Black people, right?
Other Black men.
Okay, sorry. We have a big domestic audience, but we also have a big international audience, so we kind of have to do a little bit of, sorry about that. Translation.
Yeah. So we were in South Central or in Compton, I forget where, and I would approach them and ask them for their signature. And they would reply, "I'm not a citizen." And I would be like, "Huh? I'm not a citizen." The next one would say, "Third, I'm not a citizen." Finally, it dawned on me what they were saying, that they had been in the penitentiary and that they were denied the right to vote. They couldn't vote. And so
so they are essentially not a citizen. I mean,
born and raised.
Yeah.
But not a citizen. You can't vote. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah. And this is done on purpose. I mean, I've looked at these statistics and I've seen so many things like, and wow, that's a very powerful, of course, it makes so much sense. And what's her name? Michelle Alexander, in her book, in the first paragraph, she talks about this family for 6 generations. Like his great grandfather was born as an enslaved person, and his grandfather, I can't remember why, but couldn't read. So no, sorry. Okay, whatever it was back then, I think I skipped a generation. Okay. 6 generations ago, he was born a slave and he died a slave. Then his progeny was born a slave, but then he was freed. But because he couldn't read, he could not vote. And then we get to his grandfather. His grandfather could not afford to pay the poll tax, even though he could read. So that's why he could not vote. And his father was a felon, and that's why he could not vote. And he was also a felon, and he could not vote. So and she goes through this entire family, and that's just one family of not being essentially citizens in the ways that matters.
Sure. I'll tell you another little story. There's some sections of the Black community that are doing well. My goddaughter and her family live in PG County, outside of DC, right outside of Prince George's County, right outside of Washington.
Yeah, I know where it is.
And her husband is a very skilled worker, as an electrician, and so he makes a nice piece of money. And she is a government worker, and so she does well. And they built their own house, and so I took my nephew, who is now deceased. He was killed in front of my father's house about 2 years ago, Damon, to down there because I wanted him, because Damon comes from a family, his mother's family, 4 generations have never worked because there are no jobs, and because of where I'm from Ohio, from Youngstown, and the main industry there was steel. And when the mills collapsed in the mid-'70s, the city collapsed and all of the industry around it collapsed. So he couldn't find a job. His father, my brother, regularly unemployed. His grandfather also unable to find his uncles and aunts and so on. But I wanted him to know that there was a way out, and that there was some who were able, if he got a trade or something, he could find a way out. So I took him down there to see that there are Black people who are able to find, some solutions to our economic problems, even though it's very difficult. And when I got down there and showed him that and talked to him, he looked at me and he said, "Uncle Joey," he said, "that ain't for people like me." And that last phrase that he said, "that ain't for people like me," just blew me away, because he had imbibed and internalized the notion that for his generation and for his peers and those around him, that the possibility of working just didn't work. It was like beyond his understanding, really. Even when I took it and showed it to him. So that's kind of, there's always the feeling that you're not enough, that you're less than, that you're incapable of. And that's a hard emotional and psychological habit to break out of, if that makes any sense.
Oh, no, it makes perfect sense. And so this is kind of really interesting in that I've been studying a lot of history, and I told you about my potential project. And I was looking at a lot of the propaganda from back in the day. So it's I looked at not Taiwan, I'm sorry, Tibet, where there was a large group of enslaved people, etc. And it seems like in order to uphold this kind of system, there's always these, even if they're the same race, in Tibet, it would manifest as some kind of untouchability where you couldn't drink from the same cup as the Lama, which used to exist in the South here. And for my liberal friends, I have to tell them that until they basically won the war with the child, that discrimination existed. So it's with racism, is not going to be. You have to basically win both the class war and plan, and same with the Soviets. There was like some of the propaganda you see is are just like I mean, they had the same tropes, like that the Slavs would come and rape the good German woman, blah blah blah. And in order to get like that respectability amongst the folks, they literally had to win World War II. And so I guess people don't understand what is the manifestation of like racism. I'm a big subscriber to Gerald Horne's counter-revolution of 1776. By the way, this is so, I always laugh because of how thick this book is. White supremacy confronted. Slavery, like the economic system was given, like what he said, basically the base was the slavery, the superstructure was all the levels of racism, the Jim Crow laws, the renting out people for farms, etc. And until you kind of get rid of that, it's going to always exist. And I feel, I'm Indian and I've grew up in Michigan and I've seen so much. Like, I felt it in many ways, but I always had if worse comes to worse, I always had an exit valve of, oh, I don't have to live here. I can go to India. There isn't that exit valve, but so I feel like a lot of people don't understand that you can't really negotiate away racism because it is a manifestation of who's in power. Do you agree with me?
It's part of this country's DNA, you know? And we have a show every Friday morning, Good Morning Revolution, and I made that statement. And I was surprised at how controversial it was, you know? People were like, no, that's not true. How dare you say something like that?
What did you say?
That racism is part of this country's DNA.
Of course it is. I mean, there's nothing.
And not just this country, it's part of the whole Western world's DNA.
Of course, the whole transatlantic slave trade.
The slave trade, the rape of India, the colonization of Latin America. That Marx even said, you know, that was part of what he calls the primitive accumulation of capital.
Yep.
Were it not for that, capitalism would not have been able. That's where they got the money in order to invest in the big industry, and they were able to enclose the farms and kick people off of the land, and so on and so forth. And you know what, Isha, even after you get rid of it, even after you abolish the superstructure, it's going to take generations to rid ourselves of. I mean, just think about it in terms of sexism, male supremacy, which existed before capitalism, by the way. You can imagine that because you're fed this ideology from the time you're born, you know, it's going to take, you know, I don't know. I hope it doesn't take centuries, but it's going to take a while for us to really understand and recognize each other as equal human beings. And the beginning of doing that is to remove the economic and social foundations of it. And that's what, you know, a socialist revolution will do. It'll lay the basis for getting rid of it, because in addition to everything else, it's profitable. They make money. It's a basis for super profits, you know? They make money off of it.
So Janet, I think I decided on the piece we're going to read. It's called Liberal Professor on Equality. This is a nice book, by the way. This is everything Lenin's ever said about the United States of America.
So, shall I begin?
Yeah.
A liberal professor on equality, V.I. Lenin. Liberal professor Mr. Tugan Baranovsky is on the warpath against socialism. This time he has approached the question not from the political and economic angle, but from that of an abstract discussion on equality.
Liberals love doing that. Oh my God. The abstract one where it's like all hypotheticals and it's like, okay, that has never happened. So are we? Yeah, go on.
I hear you. Perhaps the professor thought that such an abstract discussion, more suitable for the religious and philosophical gathering he had addressed, quote, if we take socialism not as an economic theory, but as a living ideal, end of quote, Mr. Tugan declared, quote, then obviously it is associated with the ideal of equality. But equality is a concept that cannot be deduced from the experience and reason, end of quote.
Oh my God, liberals still do this with their like lived experience nonsense. Like, yes, of course you can deduce equality from like the concept of experience and reason. For example, in Congo, there are child slaves mining your cobalt. That's not equality. Here in the US, you have billionaires. I mean, liberals love this like standpoint epistemology because it gets them to avoid confronting what they don't want to change.
Okay, should I continue?
Of course, unless you have something to say about it.
So let's continue a little bit. So Lenin continues, this is the reasoning of a liberal scholar who repeats the incredibly trite and threadbare argument that experience and reason clearly proves that men are not equal. Yet socialism bases its ideal on equality. And socialism, if you please, is an absurdity which is contrary to experience and reason and so forth. Mr. Tugan repeats the old trick of the reactionary. First, to misinterpret socialism by making it out to be an absurdity, and then to triumphantly refute the absurdity.
That's all of like Fox News.
Right?
Yeah.
When we say that experience and reason prove that men are not equal, we mean by equality in abilities or similarity in physical strength and mental ability. It goes without saying that in this respect, men are not equal. No sensible person and no socialist forgets this. But this kind of equality has nothing whatever to do with socialism. If Mr. Tugan is quite unable to think, he is at least able to read. Were lie to Lake, the well-known work of one of the founders of scientific socialism.
Hold on. He says, were he to take, yeah. There's a typo. Were he to take the well-known.
Were he to take the well-known work of one of the founders of scientific socialism, Frederick Engels, directed against Dühring, he would find there is a special section explaining the absurdity of imagining the economic equality means anything else than the abolition of classes. But where professors set out to refute socialism, one never knows what to wonder at most, their stupidity, their ignorance, or their unscrupulousness.
Yes. You had a comment?
No. Since we have Mr. Tugan to deal with, we shall have to start with the rudiments. By political equality, social democrats mean equal rights. And by economic equality, as we have already said, they mean the abolition of classes. As for, establishing human equality, in the sense of equality of strength and abilities, physical and mental, socialists do not even think of such things. I think that this concept of the importance of political equality, that is the struggle for equal rights, Isha, is one of the things that a lot of the people on the left don't understand the significance of it, you know?
Absolutely. And they don't, another thing they don't understand is that it's not like you can go lobby like the billionaires for fracking and just like get it passed. It has to be done in ways that we don't know the solution to, because our system does not offer a path for this. And we have to find a new way and a new creative way to somehow make it happen. And you're absolutely right. The idea of political equality and how to get it is really lost on. In fact, that's why I started this show, is because I kept on getting really, with bread tubers, they'd like say the dumbest thing. I mean, not sorry. Bread tubers would say, I feel like when I'm with you, I have to be more highbrow and not call people dumb. So bread tubers would often be misguided in thinking that just through electoralism, you can get even like significant reforms without understanding all the pressures, like what happens when you get to Washington with all the staff, the lobbyists, blah, blah, blah. Even if the person is completely uncorrupt and clean as a whistle, if they protest too much, they're going to get kicked out of committee. Eventually, they can even get their seat gerrymandered. So that's kind of why I started this show, is because I wanted people to kind of understand that it is a very complicated topic, and it needs to be, no one knows how to do it, and we need to learn, I guess.
Yes. There's a lot we need to learn, which is kind of revealed in the next paragraph, if I can continue.
Of course.
He says, political equality is a demand for equal political rights for all citizens. And he underlines all citizens of a country who have reached a certain age and who do not suffer either from ordinary or liberal feeble-mindedness.
This is him trolling a little bit.
The struggle for political equality is a demand for equal political rights for all citizens. And that's one of the things that is still very present in the United States, because all citizens do not have equal political rights, which is why, speaking of the point that you just made, the Republicans are placing so much emphasis on denying people the right to vote.
And then there's just the Senate where, I don't know if you live in Manhattan, but I live in Manhattan, and somebody did this infographic where they took the population of both Dakotas, and I think Upper Manhattan has more people than both the Dakotas combined. Yet they get 4 senators amongst them, and we get 2. And so like even there is the not equal in regards to your voice.
Absolutely. And most of these states that are out in the far west are very thinly populated and are predominantly white. But then you have a city like Washington, D.C., which used to be, 70, 80% black. Now I think it's around 55%. And yet there's no senator. They have no voting rights in the House of Representatives, you see. And so the struggle for... And
then we get to Guam and Puerto Rico and all the other Virgin Islands.
Exactly. And so Puerto Rico, for example, should be granted the right to have their own country. They should be independent. I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't be. And so this, and Lenin makes the point in another article that this struggle for political rights, that socialism is impossible. A socialist revolution is impossible without fully participating in it in order to prepare the working class for ruling. And then he also, in the next breath, says that it's impossible for the working class to maintain and deepen that socialism without the victory of complete democracy, what he calls complete democracy. So both in the preparation for revolution and afterwards, the struggle for democracy is extremely important. Should I go on?
Of course.
This demand for political equality was first advanced not by the socialists, not by the proletariat, but by the bourgeoisie. The well-known historical experience of all countries of the world would prove this. And Mr. Tugend could easily have discovered this had he not called experience to witness solely in order to dupe students and workers and please the powers that be by abolishing socialism.
That's funny.
The bourgeoisie put forward the demand for equal rights for all citizens in the struggle against medieval, feudal, self-owner, and caste privilege. In Russia, for example, unlike America, Switzerland, and other countries, the privileges of the nobility are preserved to this day in all spheres of political life, in elections to the Council of State, in elections to the Duma, in the municipal administration and taxation, and many other things. Even the most dull-witted and ignorant person can grasp the fact that individual members of the nobility are not equal in physical and mental abilities anymore than are people belonging to the tax-paying base, low-born, or non-privileged peasant class. But in rights, all nobles are equal, just as all the peasants are equal in their lack of rights. Does the learned liberal Professor Tugend now understand the difference between equality in the sense of equal rights and equality in the sense of equal strength and abilities? We shall now deal with economic equality.
I wonder which country he shows as an example of what not to be done.
The US of A. He says in the United States of America, as in other advanced countries, there are no medieval privileges. All citizens are equal in political rights, but are they equal as regards their position in social production? Well, V.I. Lenin is not quite absolutely correct here, because women were not granted citizenship when he wrote this. I mean,
1914, correct.
Yeah. So
okay. So yeah, we did find it. I think he kind of. You're right.
He was talking about men, white men, a property. But okay. We'll allow him that mistake, and no one's perfect. So he says all citizens are equal in political rights, but are they equal?
No, he's right, because he says all citizens. So it's about who is a citizen and who's not a citizen, not all people.
Right, all citizens are equal in political rights.
Can you continue to read? I'm going to have to look this up in Russian. Go ahead.
Okay. But are they equal as regards their position in social production? No, Mr. Tugend, they are not. Come on land, factories, and capital, and live on the unpaid labor of the workers. These form an insignificant minority. Others, namely the vast mass of the population, own no means of production and live only by selling their labor power. These are proletarians. In the United States, there is no aristocracy, and the bourgeoisie and the proletariat enjoy equal political rights, but they are not equal in class status. One class, the capitalists, own the means of production and live on the unpaid labor of the workers. The other class, the wage workers, the proletariat, own no means of production and live by selling their labor power in the market. The abolition of classes means placing all citizens on an equal footing with regard to the means of production belonging to society as a whole. It means giving all citizens equal opportunities of working on the publicly owned means of production, on the publicly owned land, on the publicly owned factories, and so forth. This explanation of socialism has been necessary to enlighten our learned professor. Mr. Tubman, who may, if he tries hard, now grasp the fact that it is absurd to expect equality of strength and abilities in socialist society. In brief, when socialists speak of equality, they always mean social equality, of social status, and not by any means the physical or mental equality of individuals. The puzzled reader may ask, how could a learned liberal professor have forgotten these elementary axioms familiar to anyone who has read any exposition of the views of socialism? The answer is simple. The personal qualities of present-day professors are such that we may find among them even exceptionally stupid people like Tubman. But the social status of professors in bourgeois society is such that only those are allowed to hold such posts who sell science to serve the interests of capital and agree to utter the most famous nonsense, the most unscrupulous drivel and twaddle against the socialists. The bourgeoisie will forgive the professors all this as long as they go on, quote, abolishing, end of quote, socialism. And that's the end of Lenin's polemic.
Okay, so actually he does not quite, okay, sorry. There is a little bit of a kind of a translation issue. Okay, so, okay. Как в других okay. He seems to say that they don't have medieval like privilege. And he, okay, so okay, hold on one sec. I'm sorry, I just need to, because he's using, this is Russian's one of the worst languages in terms of like word order. It's really the worst. So hold on. It's a verb. Like there's different context to different words. So okay. So it doesn't look like he means citizens or even people, but it's like seems like a comparison to something to do with Tsarist Russia, which I'll figure out. Sorry, I'm obsessing over this. I have often, when Lenin doesn't make sense, I always check in Russian because I can't now.
No, you're right, because he had he did understand that African Americans and Native Americans were denied equal rights in this country.
He wrote an entire treatise on American agriculture, which was very illuminating. No one had ever shown me all those statistics of like how the farms just went for a majority of African Americans. So Joe, what? I guess what is to be done next in terms of the CPUSA? What are you guys planning on doing? Any events that people should think about coming to?
Well, broadly speaking, the big question before the country is addressing the economic and social and the health crisis that we're, confronted with. It's extremely important.
I often think that we should also, I guess for me, more than elections, I think the most important part of the election is the opportunity for the Communist Party to go out and talk to people and try to persuade them. Like the process seems more important to me than the result.
Well, you're absolutely right. The process is extremely important. And that's why we're running candidates. We're putting forward, we're going to put forward party candidates wherever we can. We had stopped doing that for many years, which was a big mistake on our part.
I don't know. I think I understand. Yeah, I mean, I'd say it depends. I don't know if it helps people understand socialism, makes them more politically conscious and more participatory. I think it's a great idea.
But
no, that's all it is. I don't know if it doesn't. It's a good idea. Is what I say.
Well, there are two sides to the issue. One is the propagandistic, if you want to use that word, value of advocating and showing people the nature of the system and why it has to be replaced. That's one side of it, and the elections give you an opportunity to point that out, to demonstrate the hypocrisy of the system and its unfairness and the inherent inequality that is going to continue as long as capitalism continues. That's one side of it. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of it is the battle for reforms to help improve people's lives, which is another, because people, you have to win victories. You can't get defeated over and beat down over and over and over. If you're a worker, you go out on strike. And by the way, there are strike waves taking place all over the country, for the last 3 or 4 months. You can't keep going on strike and getting your butt whooped. You got to find a way to win. And by the way, workers are now in many places around the country feel that they can win. And so our participation in the political process is both to win real victories and at the same time expose the nature of the system. And that's we have to be part and parcel of both of those processes, so that we have the confidence that we can affect, because a lot of people are cynical.
I know.
Giving up.
Yep.
I feel like they're not doing nothing for me. I tried to get my nephew to come to an election event last year. He said, Uncle Joe, why should I go? Democrats haven't done anything for me.
Yeah.
And the Republicans, I don't expect them to. So what's the point?
I agree.
Yeah.
That's why you should join the CPUSA.
That's why you people should join the party, because we need to fight in order to bring about real change, fundamental change, and social revolution kind of change that puts us in the place of the capitalists, so that the working class can be raised up to become a ruling class, and not just in name, but in fact.
Exactly.
So, and there's so many struggles on so many different levels. It's not just. Like, for example, in Chicago, last summer, they, for the first time, won real radical reform in the form of a civilian review board. No, not review, control board of the police.
I remember.
That was really the first time that's happened, where civilians, the public, will be able to impact hiring and firing, budget,
but
and so on and so forth.
Something happened, right? That didn't really pan through?
Well, it wasn't absolutely what we wanted, but it was better than having a board that just has the authority to examine, but not hire and fire, not be able to affect real change.
Okay, and how long have they been in operation yet, or?
No, they just started. They just started, and now they're looking. As I understand that the legislation calls for the election of, I don't know, 2 or 3 people per district in Chicago, which is a big city. And so now they have to find candidates to run for office in all of these different places. So the election hasn't taken place.
Okay.
They just approved the process for holding the election, if you understand what I mean.
Oh, I totally do. So
yeah.
To me, this sounds like something that we should all keep track of and see what happens. Like, was it effective? Was it ineffective? Like, what were they able to do? What were they able to do in law versus what they were able to do in reality? So I definitely think we should start like paying attention to it.
Right. I mean, we have to fight against police violence and murder. We have to ways to fight for the striking workers to be able to win those strikes. You know, we have to be able to win the fight to make sure that we have equal access to health care. Mm-hmm. You know, and that we're not paying out of our pockets. You know, huge sums of money, and so on down the line. We have to make sure that those people who go to prison are able to vote when they get out.
Oh no, they should be able to vote inside of prison.
Right,
yeah, actually, I was part of the project a few years ago where we were talking about prison, like being able to vote in prison. Because I'll send you the papers I wrote. But yeah, they should absolutely be able to vote in prison because there are the numbers are outrageous, is all I have to say.
Why not? Why deny a person their citizenship? You know,
because that's the point of prison. I mean, the point of prison is to kind of, I guess, crack down on people likely to dissent, also give labor to the private prison companies. I mean,
yeah, that's the thing. You know, it's a huge money-making operation. They need to abolish. Actually, prisons need to be abolished in general. You know. And the first step in doing that is to abolish the private prisons.
Yeah.
You know, that's a huge thing. The next event that we have coming up is going to be a week from tomorrow in New York City. We're going to have a birthday party for Jarvis.
Oh yeah, I'm coming.
Jarvis is 80. Good.
Because I interviewed Jarvis last year, and it was so great. He was like talking about Fidel, and it hit me about like 30 seconds to understand, that Fidel Castro. Because he was a regular dude, and I was just walking with him, and I'm like, so, yep, I'll be there. And well, thank you so much. And with that, what is the greeting that do you guys have a greeting in the party?
I'm saying goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
I end our Good Morning Revolution show by saying, stay strong, stay safe, and stay in the fight. That's my way of saying goodbye.
Okay, so a Croatian friend, a regular viewer, I don't know why, but she watches it no matter what time of the day or evening. She taught me this, which is Slavodu narodu smrti fascismu, which means death to fascism, long live the people, freedom for the people.
I'm down with that. Death to fascism, long live the freedom of the people. Thanks so much for having me, Isha.
Thank you so much.
Next Saturday.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Hi, I guess I'm on. So maybe for next Saturday, we might have to pre-tape depending on when Jarvis's birthday is, or we could stream from there. Let me think about this. Oh, thank you so much, Proletarian Pizza. I needed it. $99.99 from Berkeley. I like Berkeley. I think I've been there about 3 years ago. My friend Vivek Shende is a math professor there, I think. Thank you so much. That's so sweet. I've gotten myself into a little bit of a conundrum because I usually read from my phone, but then my camera's little link is broken and I need to go to Best Buy or actually B&H Photo to go get it. And I kind of was busy, long story, visiting the Ukrainian Museum in New York, and you're going to hear all about it. Today I didn't get in because I didn't have my vaccine card. I went home and it seems like I've hidden my vaccine card. Oh, thank you. Muchas gracias, Mr. Difficile. Pair character dancing under the rain of confetti and taking his hat off to you. You are amazing. B&H is an actual store. Yeah, B&H Photo. It's a very famous photography camera video store in New York. I believe it's owned by Orthodox Jews, but it's like the number one place to go if you need anything like related to cameras, photography, video, audio. So I have to go there and get the link so that I can start streaming from my Oh, no, it's like right on 28th and 7th Avenue? No, 6th Avenue. That's so funny. I didn't even know that they did a mail order catalog. I just, yeah, it's like over there. Yep. It's a great store. They should sponsor us now that we've given them so much free publicity. Why am I frozen? What's going on? Okay, what happened? I became frozen. Isha, did you figure out if there was a typo in the transition of the textbook? Oh, no. No, Lenin used really in Russian. Okay, so the way Lenin used it was to mean non-nobility. So basically, that there is no legal nobility in the U.S. UDP, I don't know. Anyways, because of this conundrum, I'm going to have to read Nadezhda Reminisces sometime during this week, and I will let you know ahead of time. And I'll also, but wait a minute, we can start. Do you guys want me to start reading Workers of the World Undermined? Meanwhile? Why not? I'll read a little bit of it. By Beth Sims. Workers of the World Undermined. American labor's role in U.S. foreign policy. And this seems... yes, Neil, I can do agricultural stuff on Lenin, except the problem is I need somebody who knows agriculture to talk about it, because I don't know. And, we'll figure... Once we get the guest, we'll do it. Okay, so let us begin. I guess, and we'll do Nadezhda Reminisces sometime later this week. Sorry about that. International labor solidarity has never been more essential than it is today. The world economic system is undergoing dramatic changes that are affecting the types of jobs and businesses people do, the conditions under which they do them. Businesses are growing larger, and many of the large corporations have operations spanning the globe. Automation, the communications revolution, and new methods of subdividing the labor process are converting the world into a global factory. Workers on opposite sides of the earth, divided by barriers of language, culture, and relative privilege, are actually linked together in a common relationship. The publication date of this is 1992. A transnational corporation move lucrative operations to areas where the labor is the cheapest and where the governmental protection are the weakest. Workers everywhere feel this downward tug. In the face of this ongoing restructuring of the global economy, led by transnational corporations and financial institutions that back them, working conditions, wages, and political power of all the workers are, in the words of Jeremy Brecher and Thomas Costello, being harmonized downwards. Towards the level of the most impoverished and most oppressed in the world today. That's exactly what Lenin said. Okay. These economic changes help fuel a growing international crisis in poverty and oppression. In response, a transnational labor solidarity and militancy are needed to spark a harmonization upwards of labor conditions throughout the world. This kind of sounds like she is she probably does not believe in proletarian patriotism. But anyways, such a task is not an easy one. Joe Gunn, the president of the Texas AFL-CIO, described the dilemma. The big picture is this. Wealthy capitalists are international in scope and run a global system. Workers don't have a global system to protect themselves from such exploitation. The labor movement simply hasn't achieved the global organization necessary to defend workers everywhere. Yep, that's why we need worker states everywhere. Yet Gunn's comment tells us only part of the picture. Since the end of World War I, organized labor in the United States has aggressively developed ties to the international labor community. Through the AFL-CIO and its four international arms, the Free Trade Union Institute, American Institute for Free Labor Development, African American Labor Institute, the Asian American Free Labor Institute, the U.S. labor community has reached across the globe to join hands with the foreign counterparts. But of course, they would not have been able to do it without the CIA. Along with the AFL-CIO's Department of International Affairs and Federation of European Offices, these institutes have sponsored numerous projects designed to strengthen their overseas allies. They have funded foreign unions, like the one in Myanmar that bombed the Chinese factory or something. Provided education and training, supplied technical assistance like how to bomb a factory, developed agrarian unions, sponsored social service projects, conducted informational activities and visitor exchanges, and supported political action programs like the coup in Venezuela. Although individual programs sponsored by the AFL-CIO have helped foreign labor and even been sought by it, the overall foreign policy, which is carried out by the AFL-CIO and its institutes, often harm workers both in this country and overseas. Derived from ideological biases of a select group of top labor bureaucrats, most of whom lack actual trade experience, Randy Weingarten, Max has a really good question. I would like to know what the alternative should have been for unions like the AFL-CIO. Would taking a principled stance on internationalism not improve conditions? The alternative is, of course, a Soviet, but, well, the thing is that if you realize that even when you read the State Department's manual, they call Cuba a threat of a good example. So having an actual existing socialist system anywhere in the world scares the bourgeoisie enough to give you guys enough benefits. So the best friend of a worker, it was the Soviet Union. Now it's China. So let's see. Let's continue. The resulting policies have stressed anti-communism at the expense of worker militancy. Yep, we spoke about the labor purge, and it still doesn't make sense. It is really hard, shocking. I still can't fathom it. It's just, I still can't. 1948, that was literally 3 years after the Holocaust, and how like the IG Farben trials, and simultaneously these policies have affirmed the right of the United States to intervene in the affairs of other countries, whether through government or private actors. In the process, foreign labor movements have been shaped to fit the needs of the United States government and business sector. Their capacity to develop independently of foreign intervention has been curtailed. Their most vigorous spokespeople have been undercut and sometimes murdered, like Isidro Gil in Colombia. Yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry. I'm just giving some extra context because AFL-CIO especially pisses me off. They also serve as feeble allies for workers in developed countries hoping to unite in powerful global solidarity against corporate exploitation. Instead of advancing the cause of international worker solidarity, the AFL-CIO undermined it. It has damaged the capacity of the workers to effectively and sustaining fierce oppression in underdeveloped and developing countries. The full scope of the international operations of the AFL-CIO has never been adequately explored. Although several important and insightful partial attempts have been made, this book is an attempt to find answers to some difficult questions. How does the AFL-CIO conduct its operations overseas? We know. What role do international operations of labor institute play in the expansion of business and government influence around the world? Pinochet. What are the labor federation's ties to private groups in the so-called democracy building of efforts which have become a major pillar in the foreign policy? They literally have a solidarity institute and all these like random unions. Oh, actually, I think on TikTok I explained this. There was this one stupid rumor about how in Venezuela they were eating zoo animals, and it was like a local is it collaborador or collaborator? Comprador? I don't know. Anyways, who basically pitched that idea in. Okay. Not much has been written on this topic. No wonder. Labor networks' complexity and shadowy. I'm so sorry to end this. I skipped. Like my eyes are glazing over. I'm so tired. But if you guys like this, I can read this, and then Nadezhda reminisces, and I'll fix my camera and have a special session where I'll read 2 chapters of that, because I know you guys really like that. I like it too. And, yeah, so, I'm really exhausted. Long day today. So with that, I say Smirti fascismu, slobodu narod. Slobodu narodu.